Hi everybody, welcome to our very first group critique. I'll be holding a group critique every week throughout the 5.5 weeks, so we'll have a total of, I believe, 6 critiques, maybe 7, depending upon the assignments in week 5. 6 for sure. And I typically do the critiques the day after the assignment is due for the character. So it's really a good idea to aim to get your work in by the deadline, especially for the caricature project, so that you can be involved in the group critique. If you're not able to submit by the deadline, I'll post feedback if I'm in the classroom after the group critique. Typically, I usually am one more day, and I'll post you some text feedback, which is going to be helpful. But as you probably can understand, it's really good to be part of this group critique. So the first assignment that we've already been completed, most students have completed that already, was the Photoshop exercise, the classroom in a book exercise that we did. And that assignment through the submission Dropbox, and I provide text feedback in the comments. And if you look at the announcements board right now, you'll see I have some tips on how to view that feedback, and then you're going to take that feedback and you're going to revise and submit into the final submission area by the end of the week. So the same thing with this feedback, but instead of the comments area, it's through this group critique. Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to say about the group critique. Okay, yeah, let's move on to talking about the character project. So the character project is, over the whole entire class. Every week we're going to be doing a new version of it. And so this is where we're doing the sketches part, where you're generating ideas. So let's say you chose Garbage Dump Dan, for example. You'll have 4 different sketches showing different ways that you came up with of creating Garbage Dump Dan using objects. And then so next week what you're going to be doing is choosing photographs for your character, for all the different parts. So whatever parts you have listed in your chosen sketch, you're going to choose photographs to go along with that. And that's for next week. Let's see. So the most important thing here is that you've got 4 different ideas for your character. Let's say, again, Garbage Dump Dan, 4 different sketches. And you're going to choose one of those sketches for next week. Now, I would just want to say that throughout this class, this is a very organic class in terms of making changes. So let's say you choose one of your sketches and you decide, hey, I want to make some changes to that sketch, or maybe I want to combine some sketches. Like I like the legs of sketch 2 and I like the head of sketch 1, or the whatever I'm developing. That's really okay to do. So just keep thinking it's all about creating a really great character by the very end. And so you're going to, make changes throughout. So again, the sketches may change and from the original idea, and that's just fine. And so the purpose of this sketch is to just really be creative with the sketch and have a lot of different ideas, because typically as designers, if someone says, hey, just give me one idea, we do that, but typically we like to do more than that, because oftentimes the first sketch is maybe a little bit rigid, or it's not very creative. So the more the ideas you generate, typically the more creative you get through that process. And that's typically why we as designers like to have more than one thumbnail or one comp of a design. It's just because it gets those juices going when you don't, when you have a bunch of different ideas to develop, you go, oh, what the heck, I'll just try this and see what happens. So you tend to be a little bit more flexible with your ideas. Okay, so I think that's it. So we're going to look at the sketches now, taking a look at them. And the main thing that I'm looking for is just that every object every part of your character is built out of an object. That's really the most important thing at this phase, because that is what you're going to be using with photographs. So next week you need to have photographs of objects, like something that a camera took, and so the sketches need to reflect that. As I mentioned in my notes here, drawing doesn't really matter so much. about your drawing skills. Just is it clearly communicated? That's really, everybody has a different drawing style. It doesn't have to be realistic to be a good communicator. So don't worry so much. I know in other classes we actually do study drawing, and so the parameters are different. But in this one, whatever you came up with, as long as it's clear and communicates, that's all that matters. Hi Terry. Yeah, so these are, I think you mentioned that you were doing Garbage Dump Dan. That's, yeah, great choice. And so, yeah, your sketches look good. I would just say just a couple things to work on here is just to make sure to follow the instructions that every part of your character is made out of an object. Now keep in mind here that there is actually, and this is a general comment to everybody, if you have a head of your character, which most people do, whether you have a humanoid character or an animal-like character, with different types of legs, or, there's all kinds of ways to make the character. But the head part doesn't actually necessarily need features, because like this might read really nicely as a head without the features. So at this point, what you can do is you can sort of reconfigure the head. You can just erase the features if you like, and no need to have them, or think about how you would create them with objects. Okay, that's the main thing. I might also label a few of these areas. Like I think most of your areas are clear, pretty clear. Like I think, yeah, maybe like I think this is cigarette butts here. I think that labeling is always really good, even if your elements are pretty recognizable, just because you just take an arrow, you put some nice like even printing here, easy to read printing. That way, when people glance at it quickly, they'll really understand the character. So yeah, okay, that's what I'd work on here. Hi Dwight. Yeah, I love the idea of using just candy, and I think you've got some really creative ideas here. Um, and yeah, yeah, it looks every part is made out of an object. It's great. So, feel free to choose whichever character you like. I'm kind of inclined towards maybe this one, or this one, just because they really read to me as strongly as a character. Something to keep in mind, a couple things. One is that when it's fine to leave them as they are at this point, but keep it for next week. You may find that your character works better when you have symmetry in your character, like two arms that are the same, two legs that are made of the same object, just because when we put together this collection of objects, we really want them to read as a body, like some kind of living body, and it seems to work better when you create what naturally happens is that you have a sense of symmetry. So keep that in mind for next week. Don't worry about changing that for this week. It's fine the way it is. And you mentioned that you call them sweetener. Yeah, just remember that you want to make sure that your character name stays actually the way that Eclipse Entertainment gave us the name. We don't have, as designers, we don't have the option to change a product name. So whichever one whatever character name you chose here, maybe it was Flippin' Food Fran, maybe, uh, or whatever you chose. Just indicate that for the final submission so that I know. Okay, all right. Okay, some more candies here. Yeah, this looks super cute. So this looks like maybe Flippin' Food Fran. Yeah, so good. It looks like everything's made out of an object. So I like this. I like this one. With this one, and I don't think I wouldn't, I don't think you need to change it for this week. Um, I would just leave it as is for now. But I would think about maybe adding some feet to this one, or something that kind of indicates something happening down here. Maybe it's wheels, like if it's not feet, but something feet-like. Again, just to sort of to promote the idea of this being a living character, if you decide to go with this one. For this one, something I have, and again, no need to change it for this particular assignment, but something I have noticed is that pizza slices tend not to work very well in this assignment, and I'll tell you why. It's because they're very flat, and they tend not to read very much like a character, and they also tend to have a lot of detail on them, like a lot of kind of the toppings sort of really start kind of overwhelming the character, and so a combination of those two things makes them hard to work with as a character. Not impossible, but pretty difficult. So I would say this probably isn't the best choice for your character. This one, though, I think is my favorite of all of them. I think that's super cute, this idea up here of the watermelon and also the body here gives this natural curves, the arms and the legs. Yeah, I think this is really nice. And this one's pretty cute too. I might think about maybe also doing something leg-like here. Like how you always want to think about with, and this is a general comment to everybody, is how is your character going to move? And you tend to want to have, maybe your character has wings, or maybe it has feet or wheels or, something, some way of moving around. Okay? All right. Well, nice job with that. Kayla, so this looks like Garden Glitter Grace or Glen. Yeah, this is cute. So let's see. So yeah, so butterfly. So I think for this assignment, I think we want to avoid anything that's like, well, I would probably stay away with anything that's like an insect. I think that falls into the animal human realm a little bit too closely. Um, and just stick with objects. But I think, a pot for the head could just work on its own. I don't know if you need a face, so that could be something you just omit that and use the rest of what you have. Let's just look at the other ones here and see what you got. This one's really nice. Yeah, I like this one. The skirt, the head, I think those are really good choices here. This is cute too. I love the idea of an acorn body. I think this has a lot of potential. And this one too with the skirt. Yeah, this is really nice. I think you've got a lot of, interesting options here. So I would just choose, the one that you think is, most interesting. And again, like I mentioned at the beginning, for everybody, if you want to make changes later on to your character design, if you find that, whatever you chose for the head or another part, when you start working with it, it doesn't seem to just go together nicely. You can always be very organic with it. You don't have to literally stick with the sketch you chose. You can also mix and match sketches at any point, whether if you have a really great idea in one character sketch and you want to combine them. So yeah. Rock and Rhapsody Roy. Okay, you've got some nice ideas here. Let's see. So I would say, just looking at all of your sketches, this is the one I would probably suggest as the one that is at this point really looking a lot like a character, like a living character. We've got a body. I love this idea of the big body, which tends to work really well. Legs, feet, head, hair. So I think this really is reading nicely. These other ones I think are interesting ideas and no need to make changes with them. The purpose of this particular assignment is to get one good idea. So it doesn't mean all of them have to be like, really the ones you would move forward with. You're really just trying to find an idea as a designer. And these other ones to me feel still like they're a little bit, uh, they don't quite read as a character, like a living character. They're still at that level of being a little bit more like a collection of objects, whereas this one is really reading as something that's living and moving, and we really get a sense of it being larger than the sum of its parts. So I would use that one. Okay, good job. Okay, let's see here. What are you doing here? So, yeah. So, when you submit to the final submission, just, and this is true for everybody, just if you can indicate the character that you've chosen, if it's not on your sketches, that can help me understand what you're doing. Um, so in your designs, it looks like I really love the idea of experimenting with different body types here, but I think what you want to do is you want to sort of in your character, in these sketches, to just try to, first of all, draw the objects a little more clearly, and a way to do that is to really just, instead of sketching, like back and forth, just do a solid line. Like you could start by doing very light sketching lines and then go in and just like do a nice solid line outlining the object, clearly label each part. Like I'm not sure what all of these parts are except for the candy corn and the milk. I don't know what the rest of these are. And the same with the other sketches. I'm having a little trouble. I have terribly messy handwriting. It's very hard for people to read it. So what I tend to do when I label things, and I think this is a good suggestion for almost everybody to do, is to use like block letters, like print. Print with block letters. When you have a word or two, makes it a lot easier. So that's what I'd like you to do here. This one I would keep working on the idea of how to make this look more like a character. like a living body. This one I think is getting closer, but it's again, I'm not able to understand what the different parts are. Something else to do is, and I haven't been mentioning this too much in the critique, because it's not a really big part of the presentation, but it can really help to follow the directions in terms of putting each sketch on its own page so that you, and then combining them together into a PDF, and that way you have one full page to draw on rather than dividing the page up, which I think can be a little harder to read. Again, you want to be thinking as somebody who's potentially presenting your work to a client or an art director. And as I mentioned in my intro comments, it's not so much about realistic drawing, it's just about communicating and presentation, thinking about how you can take your ideas and make them look the most powerful as possible to whoever you're presenting them to. All right, so those are the areas I'd work on a little bit more here. All right, so you're doing Flippin' Food Fred. And yeah, you've got some really interesting ideas here. I love the idea of this kind of corn cob for the body. It really naturally starts to look like it's wearing like some kind of suit or something like that with the ruffled hair. This one's nice too. Yeah, this one's too. In general, it often helps to have like a large sort of torso or body. Now, this is again, you probably now listened to my comments on pizza and why I think pizza unfortunately doesn't work for this assignment. So I'd probably not use this particular one, but I think the other ones, I'm especially fond of this one. 2 is pretty cute. I love the idea of naturally the hair coming out of the pineapple. Yeah, this one's 2, so maybe 1, 2, or 3. Good job. Rockin' Rhapsody Roy. So automatically when I look at these 2 at the top to me are starting to read more as characters, like living characters, where I can start recognizing how how I look at that is like, does it look like the character can move? Does it have different identifiable body parts, like the objects start to become body parts? And I think these 2 are the ones that do that best. And these 2 down here are starting to, sometimes with the guitar body, it can be a little hard to start, even though it naturally seems like a good fit. Somehow with all of the sort of the details on it, it doesn't necessarily lend itself to immediately being like a character, especially, with the head, the top. So I would probably lean towards these 2, either one of these 2 at the top. Something to do with your sketches, I might make sure to label every part. I'm not 100% sure what everything is. So it's really good to label things, just to identify them. I think most of it I could sort of go through and identify, but still always good to label just to make sure. And if you can even lighten up your sketch a little bit in Photoshop, that would be good. Or sometimes when you just take the photograph, if you get more light in the room, it can just lighten it up a little bit too, to just again make it easier to read. Okay, Walter, this looks like Flippin' Food Fred or Fran, maybe. Yeah, so you've got a nice job here. I love the idea of the big head here, which is the tomato. And this one looks good too. And let's see, the head here is a let's see, a bucket, bucket. Yeah, I see that could work too. So yeah, so I think all of these are good. Thing that One thing I might also experiment with in your sketches is add maybe one more sketch idea, experiment one more time with a character that has, like what you're doing here is you're having all of the features on the torso, which is very a cute idea and that can work really well. But it also might be a good idea to experiment with just one character that has like a torso with a head on top. Because sometimes what can happen is when you put the features on the torso, they can sometimes get a little lost. So sometimes it's interesting to experiment with a head, and the head doesn't have to have features. It can just read as just a round or some kind of object on the top. So maybe experiment with that, because you might find that also gives you more possibilities next week to have more possibilities to choose from. Yeah, so to make the PDF, there are instructions in the instructions about how to do that in Adobe Acrobat. If you don't have Adobe Acrobat, there's actually a very easy way to do that in Photoshop. If you just go to, if you see here in Photoshop, if you go up to the top menu, and this is out of the recording screen, but if you go to File and Automate, you can go to PDF Presentation, and it's super easy to do in there too. The other thing you can do while you're in Photoshop, you can take these photos. I think you said that you had them on your phone, so just email them to yourself so that you can download them onto your computer, your laptop, or whatever you have, and then you can open them in Photoshop and do that. And at the same time, you can also use the crop tool. We learned about the crop tool this week in our assignment, textbook assignment, so you can crop off all of these additional elements. Just kind of clean up your presentation a little bit. It'll really make a difference. Okay, so in yours, I would say, yeah, you've got some really cute designs here. Keep in mind what I said about the features, having the face. You want to make sure that the face is made out of objects. And butterfly wings, that's really cute. Unfortunately, find an object that might be a butterfly wing. And I'm not 100% sure about what the body's made out of. But if it's made out of like an insect, I would change that again to an object, something else that would replace it. And it looks like you've got maybe a human body here. You want that to be like an object again. So that's what I'd really work on here, is just making sure that you're using all objects for all of your parts, cleaning up your presentation, and then you'll be in good shape. Looks like you've got some very creative ideas here. Okay, Christy, yes, I'm familiar with that artist. It is the really cool work, and portraits of people made out of food, and then they're paintings, which is really amazing. So you're thinking of a watermelon. I thought of a turtle, Flippin' Food Fred. Yeah. So let's just go through here. So, let's see. Butternut squash, lettuce. Yeah, these are very cute. Different eyes. Same thing with uh, watermelon. Yeah, these are really cute. I like them. They're very, quite different. For this one, it looks a little bit like Flippin' Food Fred is in a watermelon and so you want to kind of think about just letting your character at this point anyhow not be in any situation. Maybe you're thinking that this is also part of, oh, maybe you're thinking that this is its back. I see. I think that's what you're doing rather than sitting in a watermelon. That makes more sense. Um, Something I might think about too is maybe also having an idea or two that doesn't have the turtle idea. That's almost like another kind of concept for Flippin' Food Fred. Um, and it's okay to maybe experiment with some that are not turtle-like, just to kind of open it up so that you don't have the same form for every single, the same form of character. Um, so maybe do a little more experimenting with that, and then you may end up choosing the turtle, but you'll have some more options as well, if you know what I mean. So you could, like, instead of having the watermelon for all of the backs, because you're sort of forced to use that element, it'd be nice if you had a little more creativity in the experimentation with the character. So again, thinking about going beyond the turtle in some of them would be a great idea at this point.